The housekeeping supervisor at Burj Al Arab noticed it first, the Do Not Disturb sign hanging on Suite 2801 for 16 hours straight. In a hotel where $25,000 per night suites demand perfection, where every detail is choreographed down to the minute, silence becomes the loudest alarm. The night manager had tried calling the suite at noon. No answer. Again at 2. Nothing. By 3:47 in the afternoon, concern transformed into protocol. Inside, beneath silk sheets worth more than most families earn in a year, lay Maricel Ramos. Her wedding dress, a custom Elie Saab creation requiring 8 months to construct, with hand-sewn crystals numbering in the thousands, hung pristine in the closet. Her diamond-encrusted headpiece, a gift from her new mother-in-law valued at $500,000, sat untouched on the vanity beside an unopened bottle of champagne that cost more than a month's rent in Manila. But Maricel would never touch any of it again. The wedding had been called Dubai's event of the decade by Gulf Society magazines that cater to families whose wealth transcends public accounting. $5 million, 3,000 guests, performances by international artists whose names remain sealed behind non-disclosure agreements carrying penalties that could bankrupt ordinary families. A reception so exclusive that attendees surrendered their phones at security checkpoints, signing contracts with 6-figure penalties for leaked photographs or social media posts. What those guests didn't know, what they couldn't know, what they weren't permitted to know, was that the bride carried secrets. Secrets that would transform a fairy tale wedding into a nightmare that powerful families would spend millions to bury. Secrets that made her both invaluable and disposable. Tonight, we uncover what really happened in Suite 2801. The medical diagnoses that were hidden. The marriage arranged to solve a problem that billions couldn't fix. And the young woman who thought honesty would save her life. She was catastrophically wrong. Maricel Ramos was 22 when she left Manila for Dubai in 2019, joining the Great Exodus. The Philippines exports labor like other countries export oil or technology. 2.3 million Filipino overseas workers collectively send $35 billion home annually, representing 10% of the nation's entire gross domestic product. Her nursing degree from University of Santo Tomas, one of Manila's most prestigious institutions, had promised respect and security in the Philippines but delivered only poverty wages and impossible hours. Dubai promised transformation, promised escape. It promised the future she'd studied 4 years to obtain. Her first position materialized through an agency specializing in medical staff placement. Private nurse for the Al-Mansuri family, one of Dubai's invisible billionaires. Families so wealthy they don't appear on Forbes lists because their holdings span too many jurisdictions, too many shell companies, too many generations of accumulated capital to calculate. Monthly salary, 18,000 dirhams, approximately $4,900, triple what Manila's best hospitals paid for twice the hours. She shared a villa in Al Bursha with 7 other Filipina nurses, each sending the majority of her earnings home. Maricel sent 12,000 dirhams monthly to her mother Rosa in Quezon City, supporting 3 younger siblings, tuition, food, medicine, the endless financial demands of a family trying to claw out of poverty. She attended Sunday Mass at St. Mary's Catholic Church, the anchor of Dubai's Filipino community, where women dressed in their finest clothes and pretended for 2 hours that they weren't maids and nannies and nurses working for families that viewed them as sophisticated appliances. She took business management courses online, dreaming of opening a medical clinic back home. She kept meticulous records of every dirham earned and spent. She never overstayed her visa by a single day, never took risks, never attended the parties where rules blurred and women sometimes disappeared into situations they couldn't escape. Maricel wasn't naive. She'd watched other workers get exploited, deported, worse. Her WhatsApp status remained unchanged for 3 years. NASA abroad para sa pamilya, abroad for family. Not for adventure, not for herself, but for the people waiting in Quezon City who depended on her sacrifice. During COVID-19 lockdowns in 2020, when the world stopped and uncertainty became the only certainty, Maricel married Michael Reyes, a Filipino engineer working in Abu Dhabi. It wasn't a love story, it was practical. 2 incomes could buy property in Tagaytay. Dual sponsorship meant visa security if one employer terminated. Both families approved during a virtual ceremony attended by 200 relatives via Zoom, everyone dressed formally from the waist up, wearing pajamas below the camera line. The marriage lasted 11 months. When Michael's father died in March 2021, He returned to the Philippines for the funeral and never came back. He found work in Manila, decided the overseas life wasn't for him, sent divorce papers via email. Distance killed whatever affection had existed. The divorce finalized in September 2022, a legal formality closing a chapter that had barely begun. Then came April 2022. During routine screening required for employment visa renewal, the UAE mandates HIV testing for all foreign workers, a policy that human rights organizations condemn but the government defends as public health necessity. Maricel tested positive. In the UAE, a positive HIV test normally results in immediate visa cancellation and deportation within 72 hours. No appeals, no exceptions. The disease carries profound stigma in Gulf societies, associated with moral failure rather than medical reality. Deportation means return to the Philippines, where HIV-positive individuals face discrimination in employment, housing, healthcare, where families sometimes disown infected members, where treatment access remains inconsistent and expensive. But Maricel's case took an unusual path. The Al-Mansouri family physician, Dr. Saeed Rahman, a Pakistani doctor who'd served the family for 15 years, quietly arranged continued treatment through private channels. Her CD4 count measured 487 cells per cubic millimeter, early-stage infection, highly treatable with antiretroviral medications. Within 6 months of treatment, her viral load became undetectable, meaning she couldn't transmit the virus and could live a normal lifespan. Dr. Rahman's notes, later obtained by investigators through legal channels, read, "Patient is young, medication compliant, prognosis excellent. Deportation would constitute death sentence given stigma in home country and family's financial dependence on her income. Family agrees to fund private care indefinitely." Maricel never learned how she contracted HIV. The most epidemiologically likely scenario involved Michael's infidelity during their brief marriage. He traveled frequently for work, spent weeks in camps with other men far from families, but certainty remained forever out of reach. Michael refused testing when she informed him of her diagnosis. He blocked her number. She never heard from him again. Sheikh Saeed Al-Muhairi, 34 years old in 2023, represented everything Dubai aspired to become. Harvard MBA, graduated top of his class. CEO of Al Nayan Holding Group, managing a $12 billion portfolio spanning real estate, technology, healthcare, media. Patron of 3 hospitals, 2 universities, the UAE's National Football Academy. His Instagram account, professionally managed by a PR firm charging $20,000 monthly, displayed carefully curated content. Falconry trips in the desert, Formula One paddock access, strategically staged visits to labor camps demonstrating his humble concern for workers building his family's towers. What Instagram didn't show. Sheikh Saeed desperately needed an heir, and his own biology conspired against him with the cruelty of genetic mathematics. In Gulf Arab society, cousin marriage remains not just traditional but preferred. Conservative estimates suggest 50 to 60% of marriages in the UAE occur between relatives, first cousins, second cousins, family connections preserved through generations. The practice maintains wealth concentration, strengthens tribal bonds, ensures daughters remain under family protection. The Al Nayan family had practiced it religiously for 5 generations. Saeed's parents were second cousins. His grandparents were first cousins on both paternal and maternal sides. 3 generations of deliberate intermarriage to preserve bloodlines and billions. By 2022, medical reality caught up with tradition. March 2022, Dubai Fertility and Genetics Center delivered devastating news. Comprehensive genetic screening revealed Saeed carried recessive genes for beta thalassemia major, a blood disorder requiring lifetime transfusions, hereditary sensorineural hearing loss, leading to deafness by middle age, and significantly increased risk for congenital heart defects. Dr. Amira Hassan's report stated without diplomatic cushioning, marriage to any first or second cousin carries 40% or higher risk of severe genetic disorders in offspring. Strong medical recommendation for outbreeding. This is not preference. This is necessity. June 2022, Geneva's most advanced IVF clinic performed pre-implantation genetic diagnosis. 12 viable embryos created from eggs of 3 potential cousin brides underwent comprehensive genetic screening. Result: only 1 embryo free from severe genetic disorders. 8.3% viability. Cost: $180,000. Emotional toll: incalculable. The realization that generations of tradition had created biological catastrophe. August 2022. London's Harley Street specialists delivered the final verdict during a consultation that cost £15,000. Your family's genetic profile requires immediate introduction of unrelated DNA. This is not medical preference. This is existential necessity. Without genetic diversification, your bloodline faces severe hereditary disease burden within 2 generations. September 2022. Sheikh Saeed's mother, Sheikha Latifa, a woman who'd never worked but who controlled more wealth than most corporations, convened the family majlis at their Emirates Hills palace. Present were Patriarch Sheikh Rashid, now 78 and increasingly frail, 3 uncles who managed different aspects of the family business empire, 2 aunts who controlled the women's charitable foundations, the family imam who provided religious guidance. The discussion lasted 4 hours. The conclusion emerged unanimous but remained unspoken publicly. Saeed must marry outside the family. But this created a social problem nearly as complex as the medical one. Marrying a non-Arab would raise immediate questions about why traditional brides were rejected, potentially exposing the genetic problems the family desperately wanted hidden. Marrying an Arab from another family might create unwanted business alliance complications or expectations of merged influence. Marrying a Westerner would invite media scrutiny and criticism about abandoning cultural values. Plus, those women came with expectations of equality that Gulf marriages traditionally didn't accommodate. The solution emerged from unexpected quarters: a Filipina bride. The strategic reasoning was multi-layered. Large Catholic population meant shared monotheistic faith, avoiding the complications of marrying a Hindu or Buddhist. Filipino culture emphasized deference, family loyalty, sacrifice, values that aligned with traditional Gulf expectations of wives. The established overseas worker community in UAE meant a Filipino bride wouldn't seem unusual, just perhaps surprisingly fortunate. Most importantly, it could be presented as humanitarian elevation of a deserving working-class woman, generating positive press rather than suspicious scrutiny. Sheikha Latifa's exact words, later recounted by a family member who spoke to investigators on condition of anonymity: "We need fresh blood, not fresh scandal. A girl who'll be grateful, not demanding. Someone who understands her place while solving our problem." Elite Matrimonial Solutions operated from a discreet office on the 14th floor of Gate Village Building 4 in Dubai International Financial Center. No website, no advertising, no Google presence. Referral-only clientele, typically requiring net worth verification before consultation. Specialization: complex family situations requiring absolute discretion. Second wives for men whose first marriages were politically necessary but emotionally dead. Arranged marriages to resolve business disputes. Unions designed to solve problems that money alone couldn't fix. The contract for Saeed's bride specified exact criteria with the precision of a corporate acquisition. Age between 25 and 30, old enough to be mature, young enough to be fertile. Catholic background for easier nominal conversion to Islam. Nursing or medical credentials indicating caregiving capacity. Previous marriage proving fertility and sexual experience, eliminating the complication of virginity expectations in a second marriage for a man who'd been married briefly in his 20s. Willingness to nominally convert to Islam through recitation of the Shahada. Family compensation: $500,000 paid directly to the bride's family upon marriage. The bride herself would receive a $2 million trust fund, accessible after producing a male heir. Dubai residency: comprehensive health care through the family's private physicians. Monthly personal allowance of 50,000 dirhams for clothing, cosmetics, personal expenses. The non-disclosure clause occupied 3 full pages of dense legal text. Any discussion of the family's genetic concerns, medical history, or the transactional nature of the arrangement would trigger a $5 million penalty, plus immediate annulment and deportation. The agency approached Maricel through Dr. Rahman in July 2022. The initial pitch framed everything as employment opportunity. A prominent family needed a private nurse who might eventually become family through marriage. Gradual revelation of the marriage proposal followed over 3 meetings. Heavy emphasis on transforming her family's circumstances forever. Her mother could stop working. Her siblings could attend university. Medical emergencies wouldn't mean financial catastrophe. In August 2022, Maricel's mother Rosa Ramos was flown to Dubai for contract signing. She arrived terrified, her first time on an airplane, her first time leaving the Philippines. The agency put her in a hotel nicer than any building she'd entered in her life. Her youngest daughter needed surgery for progressive scoliosis that would leave her disabled without intervention. Cost, $12,000, which might as well have been $12 million. The $500,000 would change everything. 3 younger siblings could attend university. The family could buy a house instead of renting. Medical bills would become distant memory instead of constant crisis. Rosa signed. Maricel signed. Neither fully comprehended what they'd agreed to, what they were selling, what they were buying into. The English legal terminology meant nothing to Rosa, whose education had ended at age 14. Maricel understood more but was assured repeatedly that this was standard, that wealthy families always protected their privacy, that she'd be treated well, that this was her family's salvation. The machinery of a $5 million wedding began turning. Maricel Ramos, overseas worker earning less than $5,000 monthly, would become Sheikh Maricel Al-Nayan. She would wear diamonds worth more than her lifetime earnings. She would marry into a family whose monthly household expenses exceeded what her entire extended family earned in a decade. What she didn't know, what nobody told her until it was too late, was that she wasn't marrying a man. She was marrying into a system where women existed as solutions to problems, a system where honesty would be interpreted as betrayal, a system where telling the truth could cost everything, including her life. November 14, 2023. Atlantis, the Royal Palm Jumeirah, the newest ultra-luxury hotel in Dubai, opened February 2023 after 8 years of construction costing $3 billion, charged $1.2 million for venue rental alone. The grand atrium soared 30 meters high, encompassing 4,000 square meters of space that had been transformed over 72 hours into something between a palace and a fever dream of wealth made visible. 500,000 white roses flown from Ecuador, each stem individually selected for uniformity of bloom size. 200,000 orchids from Thailand, varieties that cost more per stem than most people spend on entire wedding bouquets. Lighting designed by Patrick Woodroffe, the British designer who'd choreographed Olympic opening ceremonies and royal jubilees, using 2,000 programmable LED fixtures creating an aurora borealis effect across the ceiling that shifted colors with the evening's progression. 15 crystal chandeliers, each weighing 800 kilograms and requiring structural reinforcement of the ceiling to support, commissioned from an Italian workshop that had previously supplied European palaces. 3,000 formal invitations had been hand-delivered by courier to addresses across the Gulf Cooperation Council countries and beyond. 2,847 people attended, including 12 ruling family members from 3 countries, 45 ambassadors, over 200 chief executives of corporations, 50 physicians and hospital administrators, countless business partners and family friends whose net worth collectively exceeded the GDP of small nations. But the most striking element wasn't the opulence, which Gulf society had seen before in infinite variations. It was the security. Phone surrender at entry, mandatory for every guest regardless of status. Devices were sealed in individual pouches opened only upon departure. Biometric screening for identification verification. 200 private security personnel, a mixture of Emirati nationals and European ex-military contractors, paid premium rates for discretion. Signal jammers preventing any unauthorized wireless transmission from the venue. Non-disclosure agreements requiring signatures before entry, with $100,000 penalties for breach of confidentiality regarding guest list, decor details, or anything witnessed during the event. Official explanation provided to guests, privacy for distinguished guests who value discretion. Real reason, complete narrative control. What happened at this wedding would be remembered only through official photographs released by the family's PR team. No candid moments, no unscripted content, no reality penetrating the carefully constructed presentation. The ceremony began at 7 o'clock precisely with a Catholic blessing. Father Ricardo Montero, a Filipino priest from St. Mary's Church who'd known Maricel since her arrival in Dubai, performed the rite with visible discomfort. He'd counseled her twice before the wedding, sensing her profound reluctance but feeling powerless to intervene. Maricel wore her Elie Saab gown, an 8-month creation valued at $180,000. The bodice featured hand-sewn crystals in patterns requiring 3 seamstresses working full-time for 2 months. The 12-foot cathedral train was embroidered with gold thread forming Arabic calligraphy verses about marriage and devotion. The diamond tiara, a family heirloom passed through 3 generations, carried insurance valuation of $2.3 million. Maricel's cousin Linda Reyes, one of only 3 Filipina guests permitted attendance, the others being Maricel's mother Rosa and her closest friend from nursing school, later described the moment in testimony to investigators. She looked beautiful, absolutely beautiful, like something from a magazine, but her eyes were completely empty. During the reception, I managed to speak to her for maybe 2 minutes. I asked if she was happy. She didn't say yes. She said, "I'm grateful, not happy, grateful, like someone who'd received charity, not someone who'd just married." There's a difference, a huge difference. At 7:45, Imam Abdullah Al-Mazrui, who served as religious advisor to several prominent Gulf families, conducted the Islamic Nikah ceremony. Maricel recited the Sharada, her conversion testimony in phonetically memorized Arabic, Ashhadu an la ilaha illa Allah, wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah. The words felt foreign in her mouth, sounds without meaning, a performance for an audience evaluating her compliance. The mahr, the bride price required in Islamic marriage contracts, was announced, 10 million dirhams, $2.7 million, plus a furnished villa in Emirates Hills valued at an additional 8 million dirhams. These weren't gifts in any meaningful sense but rather contractual obligations, wealth transferred according to religious and legal requirements. Sheikh Saeed then presented his personal gift, a Harry Winston diamond necklace worth $850,000, placed around Maricel's neck while photographers captured the moment from 6 angles simultaneously. The reception entertainment began at 8:30. An international soprano whose identity remains sealed behind non-disclosure agreement performed arias for 30 minutes. Her fee $400,000 plus first-class travel and accommodation for her and her entourage of 4. A classical Arabic orchestra of 40 musicians played traditional Gulf music and modern compositions. An Emirati traditional dance troupe performed Alayala, the stick dance historically performed before battles, now repurposed for celebrations. The evening concluded at 11 with a 15-minute choreographed fireworks display costing $250,000, visible from Dubai Marina to Jumeirah Beach residence, announcing to the entire city that something significant had occurred. 2,847 guests consumed food and drink that read like an accounting of global luxury commodities. 30 kilograms of Iranian beluga caviar, $180,000. 600 kilograms of Japanese A5 Wagyu beef, $250,000. Saffron rice garnished with edible gold leaf. Live cooking stations preparing everything from Italian truffle pasta to Japanese teppanyaki. A 50-tier wedding cake, each tier a different flavor reflecting both Filipino and Emirati culinary traditions, topped with edible diamonds created through a patented process costing $8,000 per decoration. 2,000 bottles of Dom Perignon 2008, the champagne vintage considered optimal by sommeliers, each bottle costing $700 retail. For context that makes the numbers comprehensible, the median Filipina overseas worker earns approximately $6,000 annually. This wedding cost 833 years of her typical salary. Maricel's mother Rosa, working as a caregiver in Quezon City, would need to work 8,330 years at her current wage to afford what was spent on her daughter's wedding in 5 hours. Maricel's wedding day had begun 14 hours earlier, at 10 in the morning, in a bridal suite that occupied an entire floor of Atlantis the Royal. 5 hours of continuous preparation by a team of 6 specialists. Airbrush makeup application, heat-resistant formulation designed for Dubai's 35-degree evening temperature, and humidity that could destroy traditional cosmetics in minutes. Hair styled into an elaborate updo requiring 200 individual pearl pins, each placed according to a design sketched 3 weeks prior. The 12-foot train attached to her gown using 47 hidden clasps that would allow later removal for easier movement during the reception. Nadia Khalil, the Lebanese makeup artist hired for $8,000 to prepare the bride, later recalled in an interview with a women's magazine, "She was silent the entire time, completely silent. Most brides won't stop talking. They're excited, nervous, crying, laughing, calling their mothers every 10 minutes. Maricel just stared at herself in the mirror like she was watching someone else get ready, like she was witnessing her own transformation into someone she didn't recognize. I kept trying to make conversation, but she'd just nod or give one-word answers. At one point, I saw tears forming, but she blinked them away before they could ruin the makeup. I asked if she was okay. She said, "I'm fine," but she wasn't fine. Anyone could see that. At 7:02, Maricel walked the 40-meter aisle alone, escorted by neither parent according to a decision made by Sheikh Latifah. In Filipino tradition, both parents escort the bride as symbol of family blessing and continuity. But Rosa Ramos, her mother, had been seated in the back section reserved for service staff families, a calculated placement that reinforced Maricel's transition from working class to aristocracy required symbolic separation from her origins. Rosa sat between a Sri Lankan maid and a Pakistani driver, watching her daughter walk alone toward a future that terrified both of them. Security footage, timestamp 1902-34, analyzed later by investigators, shows Maricel pause halfway down the aisle. For 4.3 seconds, timestamp confirmed, she stops completely. Her head turns slightly, as though she might look back. Sheikh Saeed's expression, visible in footage from a different angle, shifts from practiced smile to irritation. His jaw tightens, his eyes narrow fractionally. Then Maricel continues walking, the moment passing so quickly that most guests didn't notice the hesitation. The vows had been pre-written by the family's legal team, reviewed by both Islamic scholars and Catholic clergy to ensure acceptable hybrid phrasing. Maricel recited them phonetically, stumbling slightly over Arabic words she'd practiced but never internalized. "I pledge my loyalty to this family, my devotion to this union, and my commitment to honoring the traditions of my new home while cherishing the faith of my heritage." No mention of love. No personal promises composed by the couple. No spontaneous declarations. Just legal obligations wrapped in ceremonial language, a contract recited like corporate merger terms. For 3 hours, Maricel and Sheikh Saeed sat on a raised dais covered in white roses, visible to all 2,847 guests, performing happiness for an audience evaluating whether this unprecedented marriage would succeed or become scandal. They posed for over 400 photographs with guests who congratulated them in Arabic, English, Tagalog, languages Maricel barely understood while smiling mechanically. They fed each other cake in the traditional photo opportunity, the moment captured by 8 photographers simultaneously from different angles. They danced one choreographed waltz to music selected by Saeed's PR team, moving through steps Maricel had practiced with a professional dance instructor twice weekly for 2 weeks before the wedding. Those who watched closely, and several guests later admitted they'd watched very closely, curious about this unusual marriage, noticed troubling details. Sheikh Saeed never touched Maricel except when required for photographs or choreographed moments. His hand on her waist during the waltz rested there mechanically, not intimately. Maricel's smile, though technically perfect, lips curved, teeth visible, expression pleasant, never reached her eyes, which remained flat and distant. During dinner, seated beside each other at the head table, they didn't speak to each other at all. Not once in 90 minutes. They ate in silence, acknowledged toasts with synchronized nodding, but exchanged no words, no glances, no private smiles or whispered jokes that characterize couples genuinely happy to be marrying. A Saudi businessman, requesting anonymity when interviewed later, observed, "I've attended 50 Gulf weddings, maybe more. The couple usually can't stop whispering to each other, stealing glances, finding excuses to touch hands under the table. These two looked like actors on a film set waiting for the director to yell cut so they could stop pretending. It was performance, not celebration. Everyone could feel it, but nobody mentioned it. In our culture, you don't question these arrangements publicly." At 11:32, the choreographed departure began according to schedule maintained by a dedicated event coordinator. Sheikh Saeed stood first, offering his hand to Maricel in a gesture that had been scripted, rehearsed, and photographed from optimal angles. They walked through a corridor of sparklers held by 50 ushers, the fire casting dramatic shadows perfect for official photographs. An elevator had been reserved exclusively for their ascent, security already positioned to prevent any guest from accidentally sharing the ride. Security teams sealed the 28th floor immediately, for privacy the official explanation. In reality, standard protocol for family members requiring absolute discretion. No hotel staff would be permitted access without explicit authorization. No one would disturb Suite 2801 until the couple emerged. Rosa Ramos sat in the family villa in Emirates Hills, a house she'd been installed in 3 days prior, waiting for the morning after call that tradition demanded. In Filipino Islamic wedding custom, the morning following consummation requires coded confirmation. "Everything is blessed," confirms the bride's virginity and successful consummation expected even though Maricel had been previously married, because in Gulf tradition, previous marriage to someone outside the family carried different weight. "We are grateful for this union" means the marriage has been properly completed without complications. Rosa sat awake the entire night, rosary beads in her hands, praying in Tagalog for her daughter's safety. She never received either call. Suite 2801, officially designated the Royal Bridge Suite, spanned 1,200 square meters across 2 floors connected by a private spiral staircase. Master bedroom with floor-to-ceiling windows providing 180-degree panoramic views of Palm Jumeirah, the artificial island spreading like a tree across dark water. Private infinity pool on the terrace, heated to exactly 28 degrees. Full spa with hammam and massage facilities. Private cinema. Butler service available on call but specifically not present inside the suite, privacy being paramount for wedding nights. Panic button hidden behind the bed headboard, connected directly to hotel security. Standard safety feature in all suites, rarely mentioned, almost never used. Everything had been prepared according to specifications provided by Saeed's personal assistant. Rose petals scattered across the bed in patterns requiring 30 minutes of careful arrangement. Champagne on ice, Dom Perignon 2008 matching what had been served at the reception. Chocolate-covered strawberries arranged on crystal plates. Custom playlist loaded into the suite sound system. Instrumental music selected to be romantic without being intrusive. What wasn't visible, what guests couldn't know, what would become crucial in everything that followed. The suite's interior security cameras had been disabled by Saeed's head of security at 10:47 the previous evening. Standard procedure for family privacy during intimate moments, they later claimed. But the timing, before the wedding even began, suggested forethought rather than spontaneous decision. This decision would become crucial in the cover-up that followed. Maricel entered the suite carrying only her small overnight bag, everything else having been delivered earlier by staff. She changed from her elaborate wedding gown into a silk negligee, cream-colored, elegant, modest despite its purpose. Sheikh Saeed had already removed his formal bisht and gutra, wearing only his white kandura, the traditional long robe that made him look somehow both regal and ordinary. They stood in the massive bedroom, husband and wife by law, strangers in reality, 2 people wearing the costumes of intimacy without any of its substance. The city glittered below them through floor-to-ceiling glass. Palm Jumeirah's lights traced impossible geometry across dark water, artificial island defying nature through wealth and engineering. From this height, Dubai looked like humanity's triumph over limitation. Impossible towers, artificial islands, wealth made visible and vertical. Inside Suite 2801, Maricel Ramos faced a choice that would determine whether she lived or died, though she didn't know the stakes yet. She could remain silent, consummate the marriage according to expectations, live with her secrets buried, hope they never surfaced in ways that would matter. She could play the role she'd been bought to play, grateful bride, compliant wife, vessel for genetically healthy children. Or she could tell the truth. She could begin this marriage with honesty, believing that transparency creates foundation for something real. She chose truth. She had no idea that honesty would be interpreted as betrayal, that transparency would be seen as deliberate deception, that the man standing before her valued honor and reputation above humanity or compassion, that his conception of marriage had nothing to do with partnership and everything to do with transaction, that within hours, she would be dead, and the machinery of wealth would begin the systematic erasure of her existence. The champagne remained unopened on its silver tray, condensation forming on the crystal bucket. The rose petals would be swept away by morning, replaced with different arrangements that told different stories. The suite that had been prepared for celebration would become a crime scene that would never be properly investigated, evidence that would be destroyed, truth that would be buried under layers of money and power and institutional complicity. But that was still ahead, minutes away but not yet arrived. In this moment, Maricel Ramos still believed that marriage should begin with honesty. She still believed that truth could be the foundation of something real, something lasting. She still believed that the man she just married deserved to know who she really was, her history, her diagnosis, her humanity beyond the role she'd been purchased to perform. She believed that confession would lead to understanding, that vulnerability would create intimacy, that honesty would be received as gift rather than attack. She was wrong about all of it, catastrophically, fatally wrong. Sheikh Saeed moved to the window, looking out at the city his family had helped build. Maricel stood near the bed, her hands twisting the fabric of her negligee. The silence between them felt like physical pressure, dense and suffocating. She'd rehearsed this conversation 100 times in her mind during the weeks leading to the wedding, but now that the moment had arrived, every prepared word dissolved into panic. "Saeed," she began, her voice barely above a whisper. Before our marriage truly begins, I need to tell you something. It's important." He turned from the window, his expression unreadable in the dim lighting. The suite's romantic illumination, soft golden light designed to flatter and seduce, cast shadows that made his face look harder than it had during the ceremony. "Can it wait? We've had a long day." "No, it can't." Maricel's voice strengthened slightly. "I need you to know the truth before we go further. You deserve honesty from me." Saeed's posture shifted, subtle but significant. His shoulders straightened. His jaw tightened fractionally. "What truth? What are you talking about?" "I was married before." The words tumbled out quickly, as though speed might lessen their impact. "In the Philippines, during COVID. His name was Michael Reyes. We divorced in 2022. The agency knew, they said your family knew, but I don't think you knew. I need you to know from me, from my own words, before anything else happens between us." Saeed's expression didn't change immediately. He stood perfectly still for 3 full seconds, processing. "I was informed you had a brief previous marriage. This is not news. The agency included it in your file. Is that everything?" Maricel's heart hammered against her ribs. This was the moment, the revelation that would either destroy everything or create foundation for something real. "No, there's something else, something medical." The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Saeed's voice, when he spoke, carried an edge that hadn't been there before. "Medical. I'm HIV positive." Maricel forced herself to meet his eyes. "I was diagnosed in April 2022. I've been on antiretroviral treatment ever since. My viral load is undetectable. That means I can't transmit the virus. The doctors say I can have children safely, that with proper medical protocols the risk of transmission to a baby is less than 1%. But I couldn't start our marriage without you knowing. I couldn't build our life together on deception." For a moment nothing happened. Saeed stood frozen, his face a mask. Then something shifted behind his eyes, comprehension sliding into horror, sliding into rage. When he spoke, his voice was quiet, deadly quiet, more frightening than shouting. What did you just say?" "I'm HIV positive, but it's managed. It's controlled." "Managed." The word came out like a curse. "Controlled? You stand here on our wedding night and tell me you're diseased." "It's not a disease in the way you're thinking," Maricel said quickly, desperately. "It's a chronic condition, like diabetes or—" "Don't." Saeed's voice cut through her explanation like a blade. "Don't you dare compare your contamination to diabetes. Do you have any idea what you've done? What you are?" Maricel felt tears beginning, fought to keep her voice steady. "I'm your wife. I'm telling you the truth because I want our marriage to be built on honesty, not secrets. Your mother knew. The agency knew. They said the doctors would explain everything to you, that it wouldn't be a problem because—" "My mother knew?" Saeed's composure shattered. His voice rose to a shout. "My mother knew you were infected and allowed this wedding to proceed? She let me marry a used, diseased woman in front of 3,000 people. I'm not used. I'm not diseased like that." Maricel's voice broke. "I'm a human being who made the mistake of trusting you with the truth. The medical reality is that with treatment—" "Medical reality?" Saeed laughed, a sound devoid of humor. "The reality is that you've humiliated me, destroyed me. Do you understand what this means? I am Sheikh Saeed Al-Muhairi. My family has ruled this region for generations. And I've just married a Filipina maid who's been used by another man and carries plague in her blood." "It's not plague," Maricel said, her voice stronger now despite her tears. "And I was never a maid. I'm a licensed nurse. I have a university degree. I'm not what you're saying. You're nothing." Saeed crossed the distance between them in 3 strides. "You're a transaction that my mother arranged to solve a genetic problem, and now I discover the solution is worse than the disease." Maricel backed away, suddenly aware that she was alone with a man she didn't know, in a suite where no one could hear her, on a floor that security had sealed. "Please, Saeed, Just listen to me. I can show you the medical reports. We can talk to doctors together. This doesn't have to destroy anything. Doesn't have to destroy anything? Saeed's voice dropped to a whisper again, which somehow felt more dangerous. 3,000 people watched me marry you. Society magazines have already published photographs. My business partners congratulated me. And now I discover my wife is contaminated. That every moment of this wedding was built on lies. Not lies, Maricel insisted, though fear was crawling up her spine now. I thought you knew. The agency had all my medical records. Your mother approved everything. I assumed. You assumed. Saeed grabbed her arm, his fingers digging into her flesh hard enough to bruise. You assumed you could trap me? That once the wedding was done, I'd have no choice but to accept your defects. I didn't trap anyone. Maricel tried to pull away, but his grip tightened. I'm trying to be honest with you. I thought marriage should start with truth. Truth. Something in Saeed's expression shifted from rage to something colder, more calculated. You want truth? Here's truth. You're not my wife. You're a problem. A mistake that needs to be corrected before it destroys my reputation permanently. What are you? Maricel's question cut off as Saeed's other hand shot out, grabbing her throat. Not squeezing yet, just holding, a promise of violence not yet enacted. Do you know how many people would pay millions to destroy the Al-Nahyan family reputation? Saeed's voice was eerily calm now, rational, which made it infinitely more terrifying. Do you know what would happen if anyone discovered I married an HIV-positive woman? The business implications alone, investors would question my judgment, partners would reconsider contracts, and socially, I'd become a joke. The sheikh who was stupid enough to marry contaminated goods. I'm not goods, Maricel whispered, his hand still on her throat. I'm a person. I'm your wife by law. Law? Saeed's laugh was bitter. In this country, the law serves people like me, not people like you. You're an overseas worker with a conditional visa. You're disposable. The word hung in the air between them. Disposable. Maricel understood in that moment that she'd made a catastrophic miscalculation. She'd believed honesty would create intimacy. Instead, it had triggered something far darker. She'd exposed vulnerability to someone who viewed vulnerability as weakness requiring elimination. Please. Her voice came out strangled, his hand still resting on her throat. I'll leave. We can annul the marriage. I'll sign whatever you want, go back to the Philippines, disappear completely. Just let me go. And say what? Saeed's fingers tightened fractionally. That the great Sheikh Saeed's marriage lasted one night? That his bride left him? The questions that would raise, the speculation, the humiliation. Then we stay married, Maricel said frantically, desperate now. I'll never tell anyone about my diagnosis. We can see doctors privately, use IVF, whatever you need. I'll be whatever kind of wife you want. Just please, please don't. But Saeed wasn't listening anymore. His eyes had gone distant, calculating. Maricel recognized the look from her nursing training. She'd seen it on the faces of family members making impossible medical decisions. The moment when emotion shut down and cold logic took over. You should have stayed silent, Saeed said quietly. You should have played your role, taken your money, lived your comfortable life. But you had to be honest. You had to confess like some Catholic schoolgirl seeking absolution. His hand tightened on her throat. Maricel grabbed his wrist with both hands, trying to pull it away, but he was stronger. Terror flooded her system as she realized what was about to happen. Saeed, stop. I can't breathe. Good. His voice was cold, empty of everything except determination. Because you're the problem, Maricel, and I'm very good at solving problems. She tried to scream, but his hand crushed the sound in her throat. She clawed at his face, his arms drawing blood, fighting with everything she had. But Saeed had 30 pounds on her and the advantage of rage-fueled strength. He forced her down onto the bed scattered with rose petals meant for romance, and squeezed harder. Maricel's vision began to darken at the edges. Her lungs burned, desperate for air. She thought of her mother waiting in the villa for the morning call confirming everything was blessed. She thought of her siblings depending on money that would never come now. She thought of the clinic she'd dreamed of opening in Quezon City, the patients she'd never treat. Her last conscious thought was a prayer in Tagalog. Dios ko, Patawarin Emosia. Hindi Naya Alam Ang Ginagawa Naya. My God, forgive him. He doesn't know what he's doing. But God wasn't listening. Or perhaps God was listening and simply chose not to intervene in the affairs of men who believed their wealth placed them beyond divine judgment. Maricel Ramos stopped breathing at 12:19 a.m. on November 15th. The champagne remained unopened. The chocolate-covered strawberries remained uneaten. The rose petals scattered across. The bed absorbed her final tears. Sheikh Saeed Al-Muhairi, heir to billions, stood over his wife's body for 37 seconds, breathing hard, his hands still around her throat long after she'd stopped moving. Then, mechanically, almost calmly, he released his grip and reached for his phone. The cover-up was about to begin. Saeed's first call went to Youssef Al-Mazrouei at 12:23 a.m. Youssef had served the Al-Nahyan family for 23 years, starting as a driver and rising to head of personal security. He'd cleaned up problems before: indiscretions with foreign women, business disputes that turned physical, situations requiring discretion that hotels and police couldn't provide. But nothing like this. Youssef, come to Suite 2801 immediately. Come alone. Tell no one. Saeed's voice was steady, emotionless, the voice of someone issuing instructions for ordinary business rather than summoning help to dispose of a body. Ya Sheikh is everything. Now. Saeed ended the call. He looked at Maricel's body on the bed, her negligee twisted around her, her eyes still open and staring at nothing. For a moment, just a moment, something flickered across his face. Regret, horror at what he'd done, but then it vanished, replaced by the cold calculation that had built his business empire. This was a problem. Problems had solutions. Emotion was irrelevant. He pulled the silk sheet over her face. Not an act of respect, but practical. He didn't want to look at her eyes. Youssef arrived at 12:41 a.m., entering through the service entrance on the 28th floor that security had kept sealed since the couple's arrival. He was a large man, intimidating in his traditional Emirati dress, but his expression showed shock when he entered the bedroom and saw the covered form on the bed. Ya Sheikh, what? She told me she was HIV-positive. Saeed's voice was flat, reciting facts. On our wedding night, after 3,000 people watched us marry, she confessed she's diseased. Previously married. Used. My mother knew and didn't tell me, so I stopped the problem. Youssef's face remained carefully neutral, but his mind was racing. He'd known this marriage was transactional, all royal marriages were. But murder? This was different territory. Dangerous territory. The bride is dead? Check for yourself if you need confirmation. Saeed gestured toward the bed dismissively, as though discussing a broken appliance rather than a human life he'd just ended. Youssef approached carefully, pulled back the sheet enough to check for pulse at her neck. The bruising was already forming, dark fingerprints on pale skin. No heartbeat, no breathing. Professionally done, if such a phrase could apply to murder, enough pressure applied long enough to ensure death, not just unconsciousness. He covered her face again and turned to Saeed. Years of training in protecting the family took over. Personal feelings about the situation, and he had them. Maricel had always been kind to staff, never demanded or demeaned, were irrelevant. His job was protecting Al-Nahyan interests. We need to manage this carefully, Ya Sheikh. Very carefully. I know. Saeed had already thought through scenarios. Suicide, wedding stress, previous mental health issues, the HIV diagnosis, the divorce, pressure of marrying into a prominent family. It's all documented in her medical records that my mother somehow missed reviewing. Youssef nodded slowly. We'll need Dr. Rashid, and your mother, and legal counsel. This requires family coordination. Call them. Everyone comes here to the suite within the hour. And Youssef, Saeed's eyes locked onto his security chiefs. This never happened. The bride had a mental health crisis. I tried to stop her. That's the story. That's the only story. Understand. Perfectly, Ya Sheikh. The calls went out. Dr. Omar Rashid, roused from sleep in his Arabian Ranches villa, arrived at 1:17 a.m. carrying a medical bag and questions he knew better than to ask aloud. Sheikha Latifa, driven through private routes to avoid any security cameras capturing unusual late-night movements, arrived at 1:43 a.m. in full traditional dress, her face covered, unrecognizable. Hassan Al-Qasimi, the family's lead attorney who'd negotiated billion-dollar contracts and made legal problems disappear for 3 decades, arrived at 2:08 a.m. They gathered in the suite's living room, away from the bedroom where Maricel's body lay. Saeed explained the situation with remarkable composure. His wife's confession, his shocked reaction, the tragic outcome. He emphasized words carefully. She became hysterical. I tried to restrain her. She stopped breathing. Accident during panic episode. Never, I killed her. Never, I strangled her. Never murder. Sheikh Latifah listened in stony silence. When Saeed finished, she spoke with the authority of someone accustomed to absolute obedience. This never happened the way it actually happened. From this moment forward, reality is what we say it is. She turned to Dr. Rashid. You will examine the body and determine that the bride suffered acute anxiety attack leading to self-inflicted injury. Prescription medications will be found in the sweet medications you prescribed for pre-wedding stress. Do you understand? Dr. Rashid, pale but steady, nodded. His annual retainer from the family was $800,000. His villa, his children's private school tuition, his wife's lifestyle, all depended on Al Nahyan patronage. I understand, Sheikha. The medical reality will reflect what you need it to reflect. Hassan. Sheikh Latifah turned to the lawyer. Death certificate listing natural causes complicated by underlying medical condition. Her HIV status gives us perfect cover. We can imply her immune system was compromised, that wedding stress triggered medical crisis. Prepare documents for the family stating we had no knowledge of her condition until after the marriage. Hassan al-Qasimi made notes on his iPad, his expression unchanged. He'd helped cover up worse over the years. The mother will need significant financial incentive to remain silent about any inconsistencies she might notice. $3 million. Sheikh Latifah stated the figure without hesitation. Paid through a memorial trust in the daughter's name. Includes expanded non-disclosure agreement. She speaks about medical circumstances. She forfeits everything and faces $10 million penalty for breach of contract. What about the body? Youssef asked quietly. Islamic burial must occur within 24 hours. Questions will be asked. Private mortuary service are people only. Sheikh Latifah had thought of everything. Closed casket, justified as respecting deceased's wishes. Embalming process obscures neck trauma. Burial tomorrow evening at sunset, minimal attendance, no foreign press. The hotel. Hassan interjected. Staff, security footage, potential witnesses? The general manager is being summoned as we speak. Sheikh Latifah checked her diamond-encrusted watch. He'll be reminded that we own 30% of the parent company's shares. The hotel's incident report will reflect medical emergency. Nothing suspicious. Security footage from midnight to 8 a.m. has already experienced technical malfunction. Youssef arranged it before leaving his office. Youssef nodded confirmation. The malfunction will be discovered during routine systems check tomorrow. By then, recordings will have been overwritten by system defaults. Permanent data loss. Dr. Rashid had moved to the bedroom to examine Maricel's body while the planning continued. He returned looking troubled. The bruising pattern is very clearly manual strangulation. Hyoid bone is fractured, 95% specific to homicidal choking, not self-inflicted injury. Any competent medical examiner would immediately recognize, which is why no competent medical examiner will see the body. Sheikh Latifah's voice was ice. You are the medical examiner. You will write whatever report serves family interests. The bruising will be explained as injury during panic episode when she fell against furniture. The hyoid fracture will go unmentioned in your official documentation. Sheikha, I must state for the record that what you're asking me to do is protect this family, which has protected you for 15 years. Her eyes locked onto his. Dr. Rashid, you are a Pakistani national working in the UAE on a visa we sponsor. Your wife is here on dependent visa. Your 3 children attend schools we fund. Your position at Emirates Hospital exists because we sit on the board. Do you wish to continue enjoying these privileges? The threat hung unspoken but crystal clear. Cooperate or lose everything. Dr. Rashid's hands trembled slightly as he nodded. I will prepare the medical report as required. Good. Sheikh Latifah turned to Saeed, her son, the man who just murdered his wife. You will not be present during the staging. Go to the second bedroom, shower, change clothes. When staff arrive, you will be discovered there, in shock, unaware of what happened. You woke to use the bathroom, found your wife unresponsive, called for help. You are devastated. You are innocent. Practice that expression. Saeed nodded, his face still eerily calm. He disappeared into the second bedroom without looking back at the room where Maricel's body lay. The staging took 3 hours. Dr. Rashid repositioned the body to suggest she'd collapsed while alone. Bruising on her neck was partially obscured through careful makeup application. Grotesque task made clinical through professional detachment. Prescription bottles were placed on the nightstand, real medications prescribed weeks earlier for wedding stress, though Maricel had never taken them. A note was composed in careful approximation of her handwriting, traced from her signature on marriage documents. I'm sorry, I can't do this. The pressure is too much. Please tell my mother I tried. At 5:47 a.m., the suite's bedroom appeared to tell a completely different story than what had actually occurred. A bride overwhelmed by pressure, by culture shock, by the weight of sudden elevation to wealth and status she'd never prepared for. A tragic wedding night ending in mental health crisis and accidental death. At 8:07 a.m., hotel paramedics responded to the emergency call, met by Dr. Rashid, who informed them the patient had experienced psychiatric crisis during the night, that self-inflicted injuries had proven fatal despite his attempted resuscitation. Time of death, approximately 3:30 a.m. The paramedics saw what they expected to see. Tragedy, not crime. A woman lying peacefully in bed, prescription bottles suggesting mental health treatment, a note explaining her final decision, a distinguished physician providing context and medical authority. They had no reason to suspect murder. The scene had been too carefully constructed, the story too plausible, the authority figures too credible. At 8:45 a.m., Maricel Ramos al-Rashid was officially pronounced dead. Cause: acute asphyxiation during dissociative psychiatric episode. Manner: undetermined, likely accidental self-harm. The investigation that should have happened never began. The questions that should have been asked were never posed. The truth that should have emerged was buried under layers of money, power, and institutional complicity. Sheikh Saeed Al-Muhairi would face no consequences for murdering his wife. The system existed to protect men like him. The machinery of wealth had done its work flawlessly. Maricel Ramos, who'd believed honesty would save her, was dead, and everyone who could have saved her chose not to. Rosa Ramos received the call at 8:53 a.m. Manila time, 9:53 a.m. in Dubai. She'd been awake the entire night, rosary beads worn smooth in her hands, waiting for the traditional morning after confirmation that never came. When her phone rang displaying a Dubai number she didn't recognize, her heart seized with premonition. Mrs. Ramos? The voice was male, accented, formal. This is Youssef Al-Mezroui, head of security for the Al-Nayan family. I'm calling with very difficult news about your daughter Maricel. Rosa's hands began shaking before he finished the sentence. What happened? Where is my daughter? Let me speak to her. Mrs. Ramos, I'm deeply sorry to inform you that Maricel passed away early this morning. She experienced a severe panic attack during the night. The family physician attempted resuscitation but was unsuccessful. She went peacefully. There was no suffering. The words made no sense. Rosa heard them individually but couldn't assemble them into meaning. Maricel was 27, healthy, strong. She'd video called just yesterday morning, nervous but alive, so impossibly alive. No, you're wrong. My daughter doesn't have panic attacks. She's a nurse. She would know how to handle stress. I want to see her. I want to see my daughter right now. Of course. A car will collect you within the hour and bring you to Emirates Hospital. Mrs. Ramos, I must inform you that there will be some formalities. I don't care about formalities. Rosa's voice rose, hysteria clawing at her throat. I want my daughter. I want to see Maricel. The driver arrived at 9:47 a.m. at the Emirates Hills villa where Rosa had been installed like furniture. The ride to Emirates Hospital took 23 minutes through Dubai's morning traffic. Rosa spent every second praying in Tagalog, bargaining with God, promising anything, her own life, her savings, her soul, if this was somehow a mistake. At the hospital, she was escorted not to a morgue but to a private viewing room decorated like a luxury hotel suite. Maricel's body lay on a draped table, covered to her shoulders in white silk. Her face had been heavily made up, peaceful expression carefully arranged, looking like she was sleeping except for the absolute stillness that screamed death. Rosa collapsed beside her daughter's body, sobbing in a way that transcended language. She touched Maricel's face, cold, so impossibly cold, and knew immediately that something was wrong. A mother knows. The official story didn't explain the stillness, the silence, the wrongness radiating from this room. Dr. Omar Rashid entered at 10:32 a.m., giving Rosa 15 minutes alone first. Professional courtesy masking necessary delay while he prepared his lies. Mrs. Ramos, I'm Dr. Rashid. I was with Maricel last night when she passed. I want you to know she didn't suffer. The panic attack was sudden, severe. She lost consciousness quickly. My daughter was healthy. Rosa's voice was raw from crying but steady underneath, steel wrapped in grief. She never had panic attacks. Never. What really happened? The wedding was extremely stressful. The cultural adjustment, the pressure of marrying into such a prominent family. These things can trigger psychiatric crises in even the strongest individuals. Combined with her underlying medical condition. What medical condition? Rosa's eyes narrowed. Maricel was perfectly healthy. Dr. Rashid paused, realizing the family hadn't told Rosa about Maricel's HIV status. Another complication. Mrs. Ramos, your daughter was HIV positive. She'd been in treatment since April 2022. The stress of the wedding may have compromised her immune system, contributing to, I know about the HIV. Rosa's interruption was sharp. Maricel told me when she was diagnosed, she was on medication. Her viral load was undetectable. She was healthy. That doesn't cause panic attacks that kill you in one night. Dr. Rashid's prepared explanation faltered against Rosa's certainty. Mrs. Ramos, I understand this is difficult to accept. Show me her neck. The demand came from somewhere deep, instinctive. Rosa had worked as a caregiver for 30 years. She'd seen death in all its forms. She knew what to look for. I don't think. Show me her neck. Rosa's voice echoed in the quiet room. Dr. Rashid hesitated, then carefully pulled back the silk covering. Maricel's neck was wrapped in a decorative scarf, supposedly respecting her modesty. Rosa removed it with trembling hands. The bruising was there, partially obscured by makeup but visible to someone who knew what to look for. Dark marks, finger-shaped marks, the unmistakable pattern of hands that had squeezed until life ended. These are not from a panic attack. Rosa's voice dropped to a whisper more frightening than her previous shouts. These are from someone's hands around my daughter's throat. Someone killed her. Mrs. Ramos, during the panic episode, Maricel fell against furniture, injured herself while thrashing. I'm not stupid. Rosa turned to face the doctor, tears streaming down her face but eyes blazing with rage. I've cared for dying people for 30 years. I know what strangulation looks like. My daughter was murdered. Dr. Rashid's expression shifted, not to denial but to something closer to pity mixed with warning. Mrs. Ramos, grief can make us see things that aren't there. The official medical examination shows. The official examination is a lie. Rosa's hands clenched into fists. You're lying. Everyone is lying. My daughter told the truth about something and someone killed her for it. In that moment, Dr. Rashid made a choice. Not to confess. He wouldn't, his entire life depended on silence, but to give Rosa something. A fragment of truth wrapped in deniability. Mrs. Ramos, your daughter was a beautiful person who found herself in an impossible situation. Sometimes the truth is more dangerous than we realize. Sometimes honesty costs more than we can afford to pay. The words hung between them. Not confession, but acknowledgement. Rosa understood immediately. Maricel had told Saeed about her HIV status, and he'd killed her for it. I want justice. Rosa's voice shook but held firm. I want my daughter's killer arrested and prosecuted. Mrs. Ramos, I strongly advise you to accept the family's generous compensation offer and return to Manila. Dubai is not the Philippines. The systems here work differently. Some fights cannot be won. So I should take blood money and pretend my daughter killed herself? Rosa's laugh was bitter, broken. Pretend I don't see the bruises? Pretend I don't know she was murdered? I'm advising you to think about your other children. Your family's future. The Al-Nayan family is offering $3 million. That money could change everything for your remaining children. Fighting this will destroy you financially, emotionally, and you will lose. You will always lose against people with this much power. Rosa stared at her daughter's body, at the beautiful face that would never smile again, never laugh, never fulfill the dreams that had brought her to Dubai seeking a better future. She thought about her 3 remaining children, 2 daughters and a son still in school, still dependent on her income. She thought about the medical bills, the tuition costs, the grinding poverty that had pushed Maricel into this marriage in the first place. I want to see him. Rosa's voice was flat now, emotionless. I want to see the man who killed my daughter. That's not possible. Sheikh Saeed is in seclusion, grieving. Rosa's laugh was sharp enough to cut. He's grieving? He murdered his wife on their wedding night and he's grieving. Mrs. Ramos, please lower your voice. Why? Afraid someone will hear the truth? That your precious Sheikh is a killer? That this whole family is covering up murder? The door opened. Youssef Al-Mazrui entered, his presence immediately changing the room's energy from grief to threat. Mrs. Ramos, you're understandably upset. But making accusations you cannot prove will only cause you pain. The investigation has been completed. The death certificate lists accidental death during psychiatric crisis. This is the official record. This is reality. Reality. Rosa turned her fury on him. Reality is my daughter has handprints bruised into her throat. Reality is she was murdered and everyone in this hospital knows it. Reality, Youssef continued calmly, is that you're a Filipino citizen in the UAE on a visitor visa. Reality is that visa can be revoked at any time. Reality is that making false accusations against Emirati citizens is a criminal offense punishable by imprisonment and deportation. Reality is that your remaining children need their mother. The threat was clear. Stay silent or lose everything. Freedom, future, the ability to support her remaining children. Rosa looked between them, the doctor who wouldn't meet her eyes, the security chief who met them too steadily. She understood the machine she was fighting. Understood it was designed to crush people exactly like her. Understood that her daughter's life meant nothing to systems built to protect the wealthy. I want to take her body home. Rosa's voice cracked. To Manila, for proper burial. That can be arranged. Youssef nodded. After the official burial here tomorrow evening. Islamic tradition requires. She's Catholic. Rosa's shout echoed. She converted for the paperwork, but she was Catholic. She should be buried in a Catholic cemetery in the Philippines where her family can visit her grave. The burial tomorrow is legally required. Afterward, we can discuss repatriation of remains. Youssef's tone suggested the discussion was over. Mrs. Ramos, the family attorney will contact you this afternoon regarding compensation and documentation. I strongly suggest you listen carefully to what he offers. They left Rosa alone with Maricel's body. She sat beside her daughter for 3 more hours, memorizing every detail of her face, taking photographs with her phone from every angle, especially the neck, the bruises, the evidence everyone wanted erased. At 2:17 p.m., Hassan Al-Qasimi arrived with contracts. $3 million paid through the Maricel Ramos Memorial Trust. Expanded non-disclosure agreement. Any discussion of circumstances surrounding Maricel's death would trigger forfeiture of all funds plus $10 million penalty for breach of contract. Rosa signed. Not because she accepted the lie, but because $3 million meant her remaining children could attend university, could have futures, could escape the poverty that had killed Maricel as surely as Saeed's hands around her throat. She signed and she hated herself for signing. She signed and she felt Maricel's ghost watching, understanding, forgiving. That evening, Rosa called her cousin Linda Reyes, one of the few Filipino witnesses at the wedding. I need you to remember everything about that night, every detail. Maricel didn't kill herself. Someone murdered her and they're covering it up. Rosa, I heard the official story. The official story is a lie. I saw the bruises. I know what happened. Rosa's voice was steel wrapped in exhaustion. They think money silences everything. They think I'll take their millions and disappear. They're wrong. Rosa, you can't fight these people. They own everything. The police, the hospitals, the government. I'm not fighting them here. Rosa stared out the villa window at Dubai's glittering skyline, city of impossible towers built by workers who died nameless. I'm going home, and I'm going to make sure everyone knows what happened to my daughter. They can buy silence in Dubai. They can't buy it everywhere. She didn't know it yet, but Rosa Ramos was about to become the voice that powerful families feared most. the mother who refused to grieve quietly. Maricel Ramos was buried at sunset on November 16 in Dubai's Christian cemetery, a small plot of land near Jebel Ali designated for non-Muslim foreigners. 73 people attended, mostly Filipino domestic workers who'd known her through St. Mary's Church, a handful of Al Nahyan family representatives maintaining appearances, Rosa and Linda Reyes. Sheikh Saeed did not attend. Official reason: too grief-stricken to appear publicly. Real reason: even his PR team recognized that a husband attending his wife's funeral less than 48 hours after murdering her might generate questions they couldn't control. The ceremony lasted 37 minutes. Father Ricardo Montero delivered a homily about God's mysterious plans and finding peace in tragedy. Rosa stood silent throughout, her face a mask of controlled rage, hands clutching the rosary Maricel had given her 3 Christmases ago. When mourners approached offering condolences, Rosa met each with the same response: "My daughter didn't kill herself. She was murdered. Remember that." The whispers began immediately. Filipina domestic workers have a communication network more efficient than any official media: WhatsApp groups, church gatherings, shared accommodation gossip sessions. By nightfall, thousands of Filipino workers in Dubai knew Rosa's version of events. Maricel had been murdered on her wedding night, bruises on her throat, cover-up orchestrated by the Al Nahyan family. The Al Nahyan family's PR firm, monitoring social media mentions, reported concerning activity to Sheikh Latifah on November 17. There's growing speculation online about the circumstances of Mrs. Al Nahyan's death. The mother is making accusations. The mother signed a non-disclosure agreement. Sheikh Latifah's voice was ice. Remind her of the financial penalties for breach. We've sent formal warnings. She's ignoring them. She's scheduled a flight back to Manila tomorrow. Once she's in the Philippines, our legal leverage diminishes significantly. Sheikh Latifah calculated quickly. Rosa Ramos was becoming a problem, but pursuing her too aggressively would generate exactly the attention they wanted to avoid. Better to let her return home. Hope, distance, and grief would silence her. Let her go. Monitor the situation. If she becomes more vocal, we'll address it through Philippine government channels. We have sufficient diplomatic pressure points. But Sheikh Latifah underestimated what a mother's rage could accomplish. Rosa returned to Manila on November 18 carrying Maricel's personal effects and dozens of photographs documenting the bruises on her daughter's throat. Within 24 hours of landing, she contacted attorney Roderick Villanueva, a human rights lawyer known for taking impossible cases against powerful opponents. Attorney Villanueva listened to Rosa's story in his cramped Quezon City office, examining the photographs she'd taken, noting the inconsistencies in the official narrative. "Mrs. Ramos, I need to be honest with you. Fighting a Gulf royal family from the Philippines is nearly impossible. We have limited jurisdiction. They have unlimited resources. I don't care about winning." Rosa's voice was steady, clear. "I care about truth. My daughter's truth. I care about making sure everyone knows what happened to her, so maybe the next Filipina who marries into wealth will know the danger. Maybe the next mother won't lose her daughter to a man who thinks murder is acceptable because he's rich." Something in Rosa's determination moved attorney Villanueva. He'd built his career on hopeless cases because someone had to fight for the powerless. "I'll take your case pro bono. But I need you to understand, this will destroy the life you could have had with that $3 million. The family will sue you for breach of contract. You'll lose the money and probably end up owing them millions more. Your remaining children's futures. My remaining children need to learn that some things matter more than money." Rosa met his eyes without flinching. They need to know their sister's life had value, that her death meant something, that truth matters even when it costs everything. On November 23, attorney Villanueva filed a formal complaint with 3 Philippine government agencies: the Department of Foreign Affairs, the Commission on Human Rights, and the National Bureau of Investigation. The complaint alleged murder, cover-up, and abuse of overseas Filipino workers, demanding full investigation and justice for Maricel Ramos. The story exploded across Philippine media within hours. Filipina nurse allegedly murdered on wedding night to Dubai Sheikh dominated headlines. Social media erupted with hashtags: hashtag justice for Maricel, hashtag protecto FWs, hashtag Dubai murder cover-up. Rosa's photographs of Maricel's bruised neck circulated on Facebook, shared hundreds of thousands of times. The Philippine government, suddenly under massive public pressure, had no choice but to respond. Senator Risa Hontiveros convened Senate hearings on protection of Filipino workers abroad. Rosa testified on December 1st, her testimony live-streamed to 3 million viewers. My daughter Maricel was murdered because she told the truth to her husband. She was honest about her medical history, and he killed her for it. Then his family paid millions to cover it up, to make it look like suicide, to erase her existence. But I won't let them erase her. Maricel Ramos was a daughter, a sister, a nurse who dreamed of opening a free clinic in Quezon City. She deserved to live. She deserved justice. And because she'll never get justice in Dubai, I'm demanding it here. I'm demanding that our government protect Filipino workers, that we stop sending our daughters to countries where their lives mean nothing. The testimony went viral internationally. CNN, BBC, Al Jazeera picked up the story. Suddenly, the carefully controlled narrative the Al Nayan family had constructed was falling apart under global scrutiny. On December 5th, the UAE government issued a statement through their Ministry of Interior. The death of Mrs. Maricel Ramos Al Nayan was thoroughly investigated by Dubai police and found to be accidental, resulting from a psychiatric crisis. We categorically reject any suggestions of wrongdoing and consider this matter closed. The UAE respects all foreign nationals and investigates all deaths with utmost professionalism. But the statement only fueled speculation. International human rights organizations demanded independent investigation. The UN Committee on Migrant Workers issued a formal inquiry request. Philippine President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. personally called UAE President Mohammed bin Zayed requesting transparency and cooperation in determining the true circumstances of a Filipino citizen's death. The diplomatic pressure mounted, but the Al Nayan family had one final card to play. Money speaks louder than justice, especially to governments dependent on remittance income and foreign investment. On December 10th, the UAE quietly announced new restrictions on Filipino worker visas, citing administrative review of employment protocols. Within 2 weeks, Filipino worker deployment to UAE dropped by 40%. Remittances, billions of dollars Filipino families depended on, began drying up. The Philippine government faced an impossible choice: continue pursuing justice for one dead nurse, or protect the livelihoods of 2.3 million Filipino workers in the Gulf region. On December 20th, the Department of Foreign Affairs issued a carefully worded statement. While we continue to have concerns about the circumstances surrounding Ms. Ramos's death, we recognize the UAE's sovereign right to conduct investigations within their jurisdiction. We encourage both nations to work together to ensure protection of Filipino workers while respecting local laws and customs. Translation: we're backing down. Rosa Ramos watched the news conference and understood she'd lost. The system was too big, too entrenched, too dependent on Gulf money to sacrifice economic interests for one woman's justice. But she'd accomplished something the Al Nayan family hadn't anticipated. She'd made Maricel's story immortal. On December 24th, Christmas Eve, Rosa organized a vigil outside the Philippine embassy in Dubai. 500 Filipino workers attended despite threats of visa revocation. They held candles, photographs of Maricel, signs reading, "We are all Maricel," and "Justice delayed is justice denied." Dubai police surrounded the gathering but didn't disperse it. The optics of security forces attacking a Christmas vigil would be devastating. The protest lasted 2 hours. International media covered it. Maricel's face appeared on news broadcasts worldwide. In Manila, Rosa established the Maricel Ramos Legal Defense Fund using her own savings. She'd returned the $3 million to the Al Nayan family in December, unwilling to accept blood money. The fund provided free legal assistance to Filipino domestic workers facing abuse abroad. On Maricel's birthday, December 15th, Rosa organized an annual candlelight vigil in Quezon City. The first year, 10,000 people attended. The second year, 20,000. Maricel Ramos became a symbol of every overseas worker who died far from home, every woman killed by a man who believed wealth placed him beyond accountability. Sheikh Saeed Al-Muhairi faced no legal consequences, no arrest, no charges, no trial. Dubai police officially closed the case on December 20th, citing comprehensive investigation, finding no evidence of criminal activity. Saeed returned to work at Al Nayan Holding Group in January 2024, attending board meetings, managing investments, appearing at society events as though nothing had happened. His Instagram resumed posting carefully curated content, business achievements, charitable work, cultural events. The wedding that had cost $5 million was never mentioned. Maricel's name never appeared on his social media again. But the whispers followed him. Business partners knew. Society families knew. The domestic workers who cleaned his offices and served his meals knew. Saeed could buy silence, but he couldn't buy back innocence. Everyone who looked at him saw the same thing. Murderer. In March 2024, rumors circulated that Saeed was considering remarriage. To a cousin this time, genetic risks managed through expensive IVF protocols. The engagement was announced, then quietly cancelled when the bride's family withdrew. They never stated why publicly, but privately they told friends, "We will not give our daughter to a man who killed his last wife." Suite 2801 at Atlantis, the Royal remained permanently closed. Official explanation: ongoing renovations. Real reason: staff refused to enter it. Housekeepers reported feeling wrong energy. Maintenance workers requested transfers rather than service that floor. The suite became Dubai's most expensive ghost story. 1,200 square meters of luxury no amount of money could make desirable again. Maricel Ramos haunted it more effectively than any renovation could erase. On November 15, 2024, the first anniversary of Maricel's death, Rosa Ramos gave a final interview to Al Jazeera. Sitting in her modest Quezon City home, surrounded by photographs of her daughter, she spoke with the exhausted determination of someone who'd fought an impossible battle and lost everything except truth. "My daughter died because she was honest, because she believed marriage should be built on truth instead of lies, because she thought the man she married deserved to know who she really was. That honesty cost her life. The man who killed her walks free. His family protects him. His government shields him. His wealth makes him untouchable. But I want every young woman watching this to understand something. Maricel's death wasn't meaningless. Because now you know. Now the world knows. Rich men can kill with impunity in Dubai. Overseas workers are disposable. Justice is for sale to the highest bidder. Maybe knowing that will save the next Maricel. Maybe knowing that will make the next young woman think twice before accepting promises from powerful families. Maybe her death will prevent another mother from losing her daughter the same way. Maricel Ramos was 27 years old. She was a nurse. She was a daughter. She was a human being who deserved to live. And even though she's gone, even though her killer faces no consequences, even though justice failed completely, her truth survived. That's what they couldn't kill. That's what no amount of money could erase. My daughter told the truth and it killed her. I'm telling the truth and it cost me everything. But truth is the only thing that lasts after money runs out and power fades and lies collapse under their own weight. Maricel Ramos was murdered. Everyone knows it. And that knowledge, that truth, is the only justice she'll ever receive. The interview ended. Rosa turned off the camera and returned to her work organizing scholarships for nursing students in Maricel's name. The battle for legal justice was over. But the war for truth, that war would continue long after everyone involved was dead. Suite 2801 remained dark and empty, rose petals long since swept away, champagne long since poured out, the room where Maricel died preserved only in memory and photographs and the weight of knowledge that truth had been spoken there and punished. The golden cage had claimed another victim. But this time the world was watching. This time they couldn't pretend it never happened.